Jake Martinez stared at the dusty storefront with its faded sign that read, "Curiosities and Oddities," and wondered what the hell he was supposed to do with this place. Uncle Pete had been dead for 3 days now, and the lawyer had just handed him the keys to what looked like the most depressing antique shop in all of Portland. The windows were so dirty he could barely see inside, and the paint on the doorframe was peeling like sunburned skin. "This is it," Jake muttered to himself as he turned the key in the lock. The door creaked open with a sound that made him think of old horror movies. Inside, the smell hit him first, a mixture of old wood, dust, and something else he couldn't identify. The shop was cramped and narrow, with shelves lining every wall from floor to ceiling. Every surface was covered with what looked like junk from 100 different garage sales. Lisa, his girlfriend, had driven him here but refused to come inside. "Just sell it, Jake," she had said through the car window. "You don't need this headache. Take the money and let's get that apartment in Seattle like we planned." But Jake couldn't bring himself to walk away without at least looking around first. Uncle Pete had been the only family member who ever seemed to understand him. Even if everyone else thought the old man was crazy. Jake picked up a tarnished brass compass from the nearest shelf and turned it over in his hands. The needle spun wildly, never settling on any direction. Typical Pete, he thought, keeping broken junk and calling it treasure. The shelves were packed with similar items: old clocks that didn't work, jewelry that looked like it came from a costume shop, strange metal objects that might have been tools or sculptures or something else entirely. Behind the counter, Jake found a thick ledger book filled with Pete's handwriting. The entries were meticulous, with dates, descriptions, and prices for every item in the shop. But the descriptions made no sense. Instead of brass compass or silver ring, Pete had written things like directional stabilizer, class 3, and neural interface dormant. The prices were even stranger, ranging from $2 to $50,000 with no apparent logic. "What were you thinking, Pete?" Jake said aloud, his voice echoing in the empty shop. The old man had always been eccentric, but this was beyond weird. Jake had visited the shop a few times as a kid, and Pete had always told him stories about the items, wild tales about where they came from and what they could do. Jake had loved those stories then, but now they just seemed like the fantasies of a lonely old man. The shop had exactly 4 customers during Jake's first week of ownership. An elderly woman bought a music box for $5, though it didn't play any tune Jake recognized. A teenager picked up a small crystal pendant that seemed to glow faintly in the dim light of the shop. A middle-aged man spent an hour examining a set of metal rods before leaving without buying anything. And Mrs. Patterson from down the street came in looking for vintage postcards but left empty-handed. Jake tried to make sense of Pete's filing system, but it was hopeless. The old man had kept records of everything, including detailed notes about each customer and what they bought. Some of the entries went back decades, which seemed impossible since Pete couldn't have been running the shop for more than 20 years. The handwriting was definitely Pete's, but the dates didn't add up. The office in the back of the shop was even more cluttered than the main room. Pete's desk was covered with papers written in what looked like a dozen different languages, none of which Jake recognized. There were maps of star systems on the walls, though Jake assumed they were just decorative. Pete had always been interested in astronomy, or at least that's what Jake remembered from childhood. Visits. Lisa called every day to ask if he had found a real estate agent yet. "That place is a money pit, Jake," she would say. "The rent alone is probably more than it makes in a month." She was right about that. Jake had found Pete's bank statements, and the shop barely broke even on a good month. Most months it lost money. How Pete had kept it running for so long was a mystery. On Friday afternoon, Jake was cleaning the office when he accidentally knocked over a heavy bookshelf while trying to move it away from the wall. The shelf crashed to the floor, sending papers and books flying everywhere. Jake cursed and started picking up the mess, but then he noticed something odd. There was a rectangular outline in the wall where the bookshelf had been. Like a hidden panel or door, Jake ran his fingers along the edges of the outline. The wall felt different there, smoother and cooler than the rest of the painted surface. When he pressed against it, the panel shifted slightly. He pushed harder, and it slid to the side with a soft hiss, revealing a narrow opening just wide enough for one person. Cool air flowed out of the opening, carrying a faint humming sound. Jake peered into the darkness and saw what looked like stairs leading down. The steps were made of some kind of smooth, black material that didn't feel like stone or metal when he touched it. It was warm to the touch and seemed to pulse with a very faint light. "What the hell, Pete?" Jake whispered. He had known his uncle was eccentric, but a secret room under an antique shop was beyond anything he had imagined. Jake found a flashlight in the desk drawer and shined it down the stairway. The beam revealed about a dozen steps before disappearing. Into deeper darkness, Jake's rational mind told him to call the police or at least get someone else to explore the hidden room with him, but curiosity won out over caution. He had always been drawn to mysteries, and this was the biggest one he had ever encountered. Besides, what was the worst that could happen? It was probably just an old basement or storm shelter that Pete had forgotten to mention. The stairs were surprisingly solid under his feet, and they didn't creak or shift as he made his way down. The humming sound grew louder as he descended, and the air grew cooler. At the bottom of the stairs, Jake found himself in complete darkness except for the weak beam of his flashlight. He swept the light around and caught glimpses of what looked like a much larger room than should have been possible given the size of the building above. Something was definitely not right about this place, but Jake couldn't resist taking a few more steps into the darkness to see what Uncle Pete had been hiding all these years. Jake stepped into the hidden room and immediately knew he was not in any ordinary basement. The walls were covered with panels that glowed with a soft blue light, and the humming sound was coming from a massive device in the center of the room. The machine was about the size of a small car and seemed to be made of the same dark material as the stairs. Cables of pure light connected it to dozens of smaller machines around the room. The air itself felt different down here, thicker somehow, and Jake could taste something metallic on his tongue. He swept his flashlight across the walls and saw symbols that seemed to shift and change when he looked directly at them. The room was much larger than the shop above, extending far beyond what should have been possible given the size of the building. Jake approached one of the glowing panels and reached out to touch it. The moment his finger made contact, the symbols on the screen rearranged themselves into patterns that almost looked familiar. Not quite like any language he knew, but close enough that he felt like he should be able to understand them. The panel grew brighter under his touch, and suddenly Jake could hear a faint voice speaking in his mind. "Welcome, young keeper," the voice said, though Jake was sure he hadn't heard it with his ears. "Your genetic pattern has been recognized. Access granted to Level 1 systems." Jake jerked his hand back from the panel, his heart racing. Either he was having some kind of breakdown, or Uncle Pete had been involved in something far stranger than selling antiques. Jake looked around the room with new eyes, realizing that what he had taken for strange technology was actually responding to his presence. Several of the smaller machines had begun to glow brighter, and the humming sound had changed pitch. In the far corner of the room, Jake spotted what looked like a desk made of the same dark material as everything else. On top of it was a leather journal that looked completely out of place among all the alien technology. Jake picked it up and opened it to the first page, which was covered in Pete's familiar handwriting. "If you are reading this, then I am dead, and you have found the real shop," the first entry began. "I should have told you the truth years ago, but I wanted to protect you for as long as possible. My real name is not Pete Martinez. I am Keeper Zeth9 of the Galactic Council, and I have been watching over Earth for the past 200 years. Jake stared at the words, reading them again to make sure he wasn't hallucinating. The journal continued with explanations that seemed impossible but somehow made perfect sense. Pete, or Zeth9, was a member of an alien species called the Keepers who had been secretly living among humans for centuries. Their job was to monitor developing civilizations and protect them from hostile alien forces. "The Curio shop was never about selling antiques," Jake read aloud. "Every item upstairs is a piece of alien technology, disguised to look worthless to human eyes. The broken compass is a navigation device used by star travelers. The music box is a communication device that can reach across light years. The crystal pendant is a personal shield generator. Jake flipped through more pages, each one revealing more incredible information. The journal explained that the Keepers had been guiding human technological development for thousands of years, helping them advance while keeping them safe from species that would exploit or destroy them. Earth was located at a crucial junction of interstellar trade routes, making it valuable to multiple alien civilizations. "You are not fully human, Jake," the journal continued. "Your mother was human, but your father was my brother, another keeper stationed on Earth. When he died in an accident, I promised to watch over you. Your mixed heritage is why you can access the technology in this room. Your abilities will begin to manifest now that you have been exposed to the quantum field generators." Jake sat down heavily in the chair behind the desk, trying to process everything he was reading, half alien. It would explain why he had always felt different, why he seemed to understand things that others found difficult, why he had never quite fit in anywhere. But it also meant that everything he thought he knew about himself was wrong. The journal went on to explain that the basement contained monitoring systems that tracked alien activity throughout the solar system. Several hostile species had been probing Earth's defenses for decades, held back only by the deterrent field that Pete had maintained. With Pete dead, these defenses were beginning to fail. "The Dominion is the greatest threat," Jake read. "They are a militaristic empire that conquers developing worlds and enslaves their populations. They have been watching Earth for years, waiting for the right moment to strike. My death will signal them that Earth's guardian is gone." As if responding to his thoughts, one of the larger panels on the wall began to flash red. Jake approached it cautiously, and the symbols rearranged themselves into what looked like a warning message. Though he couldn't read the alien text, somehow he understood that something was approaching Earth from deep space. The machine in the center of the room hummed louder, and Jake could see energy flowing through the light cables that connected it to the wall panels. A holographic display appeared in the air above the device, showing what looked like a map of the solar system. Several red dots were moving toward Earth from the outer planets. Jake realized that he was looking at an early warning system, and those red dots were alien ships. According to the display, they would reach Earth in less than a week. He flipped frantically through the journal, looking for instructions on what to do in this situation. "If you are reading this during an emergency, activate the Nova system," he found written on a page near the back. "Press your palm against the central console and say Authorization Zethanine to 7 Alpha. The artificial intelligence will guide you through the defensive procedures." Jake approached the central machine and placed his palm against its smooth surface. The moment his skin made contact, the entire room filled with light. "Authorization Zethanine 7 Alpha," he said. Feeling foolish but desperate, a new voice spoke in his mind, clearer and more human than the first one. "Greetings, Jake Martinez. I am Nova, the artificial intelligence assigned to this station. I have been waiting for you to make contact. We have much to discuss and very little time." Jake looked around the room that had suddenly become much brighter and more active. "What's happening up there?" he asked, pointing toward the ceiling. "The Dominion advanced scouts have entered the solar system," Nova replied. "They are testing our defenses and gathering intelligence for a full invasion. Without Keeper Zeth-9 to maintain the deterrent field, they have become bold. Earth is in great danger." Jake spent the next 3 days learning how to use the alien technology under Nova's guidance. The artificial intelligence was patient but urgent, explaining that his abilities were developing faster than normal because of the crisis. Jake could now read the alien symbols without thinking about it, and operating the control panels felt as natural as using a computer. "Your keeper genetics are adapting to the quantum field exposure," Nova explained as Jake successfully activated another monitoring system. "Most half-breeds take months to develop these abilities, but stress and necessity are accelerating the process. You are becoming what you were always meant to be." Jake learned that the shop upstairs was just the tip of a vast network. The basement extended for miles underground, connecting to similar facilities in other cities. There were keeper stations in New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, and dozens of other locations around the world. Each station was disguised as an ordinary business, run by keepers who had been living among humans for generations. The monitoring system showed that the Dominion scouts were not just observing Earth from space. They had been sending agents to the planet for years, disguised as humans and gathering intelligence about military capabilities, government structures, and population centers. Some of these agents had been living normal human lives for decades. How? Do we identify them? Jake asked as he watched the tracking displays show suspected agent locations throughout the city. They are genetically modified to appear human, but they cannot completely hide their true nature, Nova replied. This scanner will reveal their alien physiology when they are within close range. However, some agents are more sophisticated than others. Jake picked up a device that looked like a small handheld mirror but glowed with internal light. Nova had explained that it was a bioscanner that could detect non-human genetic patterns. Jake decided to test it on himself first, and the device immediately showed a complex pattern of blue and green lights. The blue represents your human heritage. The green shows your keeper genetics, Nova explained. A full human would show only blue, while a Dominion agent would display red markers. The device will also alert you to other alien species. That evening, Jake decided to test the scanner in the real world. He told Lisa he needed to check something at the shop and would be back later. She seemed annoyed but didn't ask questions. Jake had been spending more and more time away from their apartment, and he could see the strain it was putting on their relationship. Jake walked through downtown Portland with the scanner hidden in his jacket pocket. The device remained quiet, until he passed a coffee shop where it began to beep softly. Through the window, he could see a woman sitting alone at a corner table, reading a newspaper. She looked completely normal, but when Jake pointed the scanner in her direction, it showed a pattern of red lights. His heart raced as he realized he was looking at his first Dominion agent. The woman appeared to be in her 30s with brown hair and ordinary clothes. She could have been anyone, a teacher or accountant or store clerk. But the scanner revealed her true nature, and Jake noticed that she was watching the street with the focused attention of someone on surveillance duty. Jake continued walking, trying to act casual while his mind raced. How many more were there? How long had they been watching? He made a mental note of the location and continued his patrol. The scanner detected 2 more agents over the next hour, both in locations where they could observe government buildings and police stations. When Jake returned to the shop, he found Lisa waiting for him in the main room. She was holding one of the alien artifacts, the crystal pendant that the teenager had almost bought. In the dim light of the shop, it was glowing, much brighter than it had before. "What is this thing, Jake?" Lisa asked, turning the pendant over in her hands. "It started glowing when I touched it, and now I can't seem to put it down. It feels warm, like it's alive." Jake's blood turned cold. He pulled out the bioscanner and pointed it at Lisa, praying that it would show the normal blue pattern of a human. Instead, the device displayed a complex array of red lights, much stronger than what he had seen from the agents downtown. "You're not human," Jake whispered, backing away from her. "How long have you been watching me?" Lisa's expression changed completely. The confused look disappeared, replaced by something cold and calculating. "I was wondering when you would figure it out," she said in a voice that was still recognizably hers but carried a different tone. "I have been assigned to monitor you for 3 years. My superiors will be pleased to know that you have finally accessed your keeper abilities." Jake felt sick. The woman he had been living with, planning a future with, was an alien spy. "What do you want?" he asked, his hand moving toward the weapon Nova had given him. "The Dominion has been watching your family for decades," Lisa replied, still holding the glowing pendant. "We knew that Keeper Zeth-9 had a half-breed nephew, but we needed to determine if you would inherit his abilities. Your recent activities have confirmed our suspicions." The pendant in Lisa's hands began to pulse with brighter light, and Jake realized that it was not just glowing but actively scanning him. The device was feeding information back to her, analyzing his genetic structure and power levels. "You have two choices," Lisa continued. "Surrender now and accept a position as a Dominion administrator when we take control of Earth, or resist and watch your species be destroyed. Humans are not capable of defending themselves against our technology." Jake thought about the monitoring systems in the basement, the tracking displays showing Dominion ships approaching Earth, and the network of keeper stations around the world. "Maybe humans can't defend themselves," he said, "but they're not alone." Lisa laughed, a sound that was completely unlike any he had heard from her before. "You think the keepers can protect you? There are fewer than 50 of them left on Earth, and most are old and weak. The Dominion has conquered 100 worlds like this one." "Then why haven't you attacked already?" Jake asked, stalling for time while he tried to think of a plan. "Because we needed to be sure that all the keeper technology was accounted for," Lisa replied. "Your uncle's death was not an accident. We have been eliminating the Guardians one by one, and now you are the last one in this sector." Jake felt a surge of anger that surprised him with its intensity. Pete had been murdered, and he had been living with his killer for 3 years. The pendant in Lisa's hands was now glowing so brightly that it lit up the entire front of the shop. "The invasion fleet will arrive in 72 hours, Lisa said. "I suggest you use that time to consider your options carefully. The Dominion can be merciful to those who cooperate." Jake pulled out the weapon Nova had given him, a device that looked like a small metal rod but hummed with contained energy. "I don't think so," he said, and activated the device. The energy weapon in Jake's hand fired a beam of pure light that struck Lisa in the chest. She screamed, but the sound was not human at all. Her body began to shimmer and change, revealing her true form underneath the human disguise. Her skin turned gray and scaly, her eyes became large and black, and her fingers extended into claws. The crystal pendant fell from her hands and shattered on the floor. "You have made a terrible mistake," Lisa hissed in a voice that sounded like grinding metal. "The Dominion fleet is already in your solar system. Nothing can stop what is coming." Jake fired the weapon again, and this time Lisa's form dissolved completely, leaving only a pile of strange silver dust on the shop floor. His hands were shaking as he lowered the weapon, realizing that he had just killed someone he had once loved. Even if that person had never been real, Nova's voice spoke in his mind immediately. "The Dominion agent has activated an emergency beacon." Before her termination, "The invasion timeline has been accelerated. Enemy forces will begin their attack within hours, not days." Jake ran down to the basement, his mind racing with the implications. The monitoring systems were now showing dozens of red dots converging on Earth from all directions. The Dominion fleet was massive, far larger than anything shown in the earlier displays. "We need help," Jake said aloud as he reached the control room. "Are there other keepers who can assist us?" "Most of the keeper guardians have been eliminated over the past year," Nova replied. "However, there are still some humans who have been prepared for this moment. Your uncle spent decades identifying individuals with the right qualities to become Earth's defenders." Nova activated a new display showing locations throughout the city where potential allies were located. Jake recognized some of the addresses as places he had delivered items from the shop over the years. Pete had been recruiting without Jake even knowing it. "The first priority is to arm these individuals with the technology they will need," Nova explained. "The items in the shop upstairs are not just disguised alien artifacts. They are weapons and tools specifically chosen for human use." Jake grabbed a large bag and began filling it with items from the shop. The broken compass became a targeting system for energy weapons. The music box transformed into a communication device that could coordinate with other defenders. The tarnished jewelry revealed itself as personal force field generators. Each item that had looked like worthless junk was actually sophisticated technology. The first person on Nova's list was Amy Chun, a former Marine who lived in an apartment building 6 blocks away. Jake had delivered a small metal sculpture to her 3 months ago, and she had seemed unusually interested in its history. When Jake knocked on her door, she opened it immediately, as if she had been waiting for him. It's time, isn't it? Amy said, looking at the bag of equipment Jake was carrying. Pete told me this day would come eventually. Amy's apartment was small but organized with military precision. She had been expecting this moment and had prepared accordingly. Jake showed her how to activate the weapons and explained the situation as quickly as possible. Amy adapted to the alien technology with impressive speed, her military training helping her understand the tactical applications. "How many others are there?" Amy asked as she tested a weapon that looked like a decorative walking stick but fired concentrated energy blasts. 17 in the immediate area, Jake replied. Nova says there are similar groups in other cities, but we need to focus on protecting Portland until the global network can be activated. The second person was Dr. Marcus Webb, a physicist who worked at the university. Jake had sold him an old clock that had actually been a quantum field generator. Marcus was in his laboratory when Jake arrived, and the alien technology in the building was already responding to the approaching threat. "The equations finally make sense," Marcus said as Jake explained the situation. "The energy readings I've been detecting for months, the gravitational anomalies, the unexplained radio signals, it's all connected to this invasion," Marcus proved to be invaluable in understanding how the alien technology worked. He quickly figured out how to modify the devices for maximum effectiveness and began working on ways to amplify their power. Within an hour, he had created a portable shield generator that could protect a small building. The third recruit was Helen Roberts, a former police detective who had been forced to retire after investigating too many cases that involved unexplained phenomena. Pete had sold her a mirror that was actually a surveillance device capable of detecting alien technology. Helen had been tracking Dominion agents for months without realizing what they were. "I knew something was wrong with this city," Helen said as she loaded alien weapons into her car. "Too many disappearances, too many unexplained accidents. Now, it all makes sense." As Jake moved through the city recruiting defenders, the Dominion began their attack. The first wave came from orbit energy beams that targeted military installations and government buildings. The human military responded with conventional weapons, but their missiles and bullets were useless against the alien shields. Jake watched from the roof of the university as Dominion ships descended through the atmosphere. They were sleek and black, about the size of fighter jets, but completely silent. The ships began landing in parks and parking lots throughout the city, disgorging troops that looked similar to Lisa's true form. "The Dominion strategy is always the same," Nova explained, as Jake and his team prepared for battle. "Eliminate military resistance first, then capture key population centers. They prefer to take prisoners rather than kill everyone because slaves are more valuable than corpses." The first battle took place at the police station downtown. Dominion troops had surrounded the building and were using some kind of sonic weapon to force the officers to surrender. Jake's team arrived just as the human defenses were beginning to collapse. Amy took position on a nearby rooftop and began picking off Dominion soldiers with her energy rifle. Each shot found its target, and the alien troops began to take cover behind their vehicles. Marcus activated the shield generator, creating a protective barrier around the police station. Helen coordinated the human officers, teaching them how to use the alien weapons Jake had brought. The battle was fierce but brief. The Dominion troops were not prepared to face humans armed with their own technology. Within minutes, the surviving aliens were retreating back to their ships. But Jake knew this was just the beginning. "They were testing our defenses," Jake said, as he watched the Dominion ships withdraw to a safer distance. "The real attack is still coming." Nova's voice confirmed his fears. "Long-range sensors show the main fleet approaching Earth. Estimated arrival time is 6 hours. The test assault was successful from their perspective. They now know that humans have access to keeper technology." Jake looked at his small team of defenders and realized that they were not nearly enough to protect an entire city, let alone the whole planet. But they were what Earth had, and they would have to be enough. Jake watched the night sky fill with enemy ships as the main Dominion fleet arrived. Hundreds of vessels descended through the atmosphere, their hulls glowing red-hot from atmospheric entry. The alien warships were massive, some the size of city blocks, and they positioned themselves over major population centers around the world. "Nova, we need to contact the other keeper stations," Jake said as he stood in the basement control room. "This is too big for one city to handle." "Communication protocols are already active," Nova replied. "I am detecting responses from 12 stations worldwide. The network is smaller than it once was, but it is still functional." On the main display, Jake could see status reports from keeper stations in London, Tokyo, Sydney, and other major cities. Each location was reporting similar situations, with small groups of human defenders, armed with alien technology preparing to face overwhelming odds. The quantum communication system activated, and Jake found himself in contact with other station commanders around the world. There was Maria Santos in Mexico City, Ben Wilson in London, and Kim Park in Seoul. All of them were half-keepers like Jake, and all of them had inherited their responsibilities in the past year. "The Dominion killed our guardian systematically," Maria explained through the communication link. "But they made one mistake. They assumed that removing the keepers would leave Earth defenseless. What they didn't count on was human adaptability," Ben added. "We may not have centuries of experience, but we learn fast and we don't give up easily." Jake felt a surge of hope as he realized that Earth's defense was not just about Portland or even just about the United States. Humans around the world were preparing to fight back with technology their enemies thought they didn't possess. The Dominion made their next move at dawn. Massive transport ships began landing in major cities, disgorging thousands of troops and war machines. The alien soldiers moved through the streets in organized formations, setting up control points and broadcasting surrender demands in multiple human languages. Jake's team had grown during the night as more of Pete's recruits made contact. There were now 37 defenders in the Portland area, each armed with disguised alien technology that the Dominion could not detect until it was too late. They had split into small groups and positioned themselves throughout the city. Amy led a team that was defending the hospital district. She had set up overlapping fields of fire from several rooftops and was coordinating with Helen's group at the police station. Marcus had established a command post at the university and was using the research equipment there to boost the power of their weapons. The battle began when Dominion troops tried to take control of the main power plant. Jake's team was waiting for them, hidden in positions that looked like ordinary maintenance areas. When the aliens entered the facility, they found themselves facing weapons that could penetrate their personal shields and energy, attacks that their scanners had not detected. "Human tactics are more varied than we anticipated," Jake heard one of the alien commanders saying over their communication channels. Nova had taught him how to intercept their transmissions, and the reports were encouraging. The Dominion forces were confused and frustrated by the resistance they were encountering. The turning point came when Marcus made a breakthrough in his laboratory. He had been studying the quantum field generators from multiple keeper stations and realized that they could be linked together to create a planetary defense network. The system would not only protect Earth but also send a signal across the galaxy that would alert other civilizations to the Dominion threat. "If we can activate all the stations simultaneously, we can create a resonance cascade that will amplify our power 1,000-fold," Marcus explained over the communication network. "But the timing has to be perfect, and every station needs to be operational." The plan required each keeper station to charge its quantum field generator to maximum power and then release the energy at exactly the same moment. Jake coordinated with the other station commanders around the world, synchronizing their chronometers and preparing for the most important moment in human history. As Jake prepared to activate the Portland station's generator, Dominion forces launched a final assault on the Curio shop. They had finally traced the source of the human resistance to Pete's old store and were determined to capture or destroy the technology hidden there. Jake fought his way through the shop as alien soldiers poured through the front door. The artifacts on the shelves revealed their true nature as defensive systems activated automatically. Energy shields materialized to block the aliens' weapons, while hidden turrets emerged from behind false walls to return fire. In the basement, Jake placed his hands on the central quantum field generator and felt its power flowing through him. Around the world, other half-keepers were doing the same thing at their stations. The countdown began, and Jake could feel the energy building to levels that made his teeth ache. "All stations report ready," Maria's voice came through the communication. "System, initiate on my mark. 3, 2, 1, mark." Jake released all the stored energy at once, and the quantum field generator exploded with light that filled the entire basement. Above ground, a column of blue energy shot into the sky from the location of the Curio shop. Similar columns appeared over cities around the world as the Keeper network activated for the first time in centuries. The energy beams reached into space and connected with each other, forming a web of light that surrounded the entire planet. The Dominion ships caught within the field found their weapons and shields failing as the quantum energy disrupted their technology. Many of the smaller vessels crashed or were forced to retreat beyond Earth's atmosphere, but the most important effect of the activation was the signal it sent across the galaxy. The quantum resonance cascade created a beacon that could be detected by civilizations thousands of light years away. Within hours, Jake began receiving communication signals from other species who had been fighting the Dominion for generations. "This is Admiral Korvac of the Galactic Alliance Fleet," came the first response. "We have detected your activation signal and are dispatching immediate assistance. The Alliance has been waiting for Earth to join the fight against the Dominion." Jake stood in the ruins of the Curio shop, looking up at the sky where Alliance ships were beginning to appear alongside the retreating Dominion fleet. The battle for Earth was far from over, but humanity was no longer fighting alone. Nova's voice spoke in his mind one final time. "The Keeper Council has officially recognized Earth as a protected world. You have proven that humans are ready to take their place among the civilized species of the galaxy." Jake picked up one of Pete's old journals from the debris and smiled. The Curio shop would need to be rebuilt, but it would continue to serve as Earth's secret embassy to the stars. And Jake would be there to welcome the next generation of defenders when they were ready to inherit the legacy of the Keepers.